Well, good afternoon. The National Assembly for Wales is now in session. And on behalf of the National Assembly for Wales, I want to express our heartfelt sympathies to the families and friends of those who have lost their lives or have been injured in the recent terrorist atrocities in Tunisia. And I have accepted an urgent question on this matter under Standing Order 12.66, and I call on Andrew R.T. Davis to ask the question. Andrew R.T. Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Following the initial comments made by the First Minister on the tragic events in Tunisia, will he make a full statement on his current understanding of the situation?
Yes, Presiding Officer. The facts, of course, have been widely reported. On the 26th of June, a radicalised university student armed with a Kalashnikov killed innocent tourists on the beach at Port El Khandoui in Tunisia. He continued his attack into the Imperial Marhaba Hotel and onto the streets, where he was shot dead by Tunisian police. It's believed that he was a lone gunman and part of an ISIL-inspired network, but Tunisian security forces are investigating whether he had the support from possible accomplices. Trudy Jones, who was 51 years old and from Blackwood, was on holiday with friends, and she is thought to have been on the beach in Sousse when a gunman began firing on Friday, and she was killed. Other Welsh people were injured or caught up in the terrorist attacks, and further details are still emerging. It is unknown at this stage whether there are any further Welsh casualties or fatalities. So with at least 18 British nationals have been killed, and the number is likely to rise to around 30 as further identifications are completed. I can say that the Foreign and Commonwealth Office are leading the UK government response to events in Tunisia with logistical support from the Ministry of Defence. My officials have been in contact with the FCO throughout the weekend and, of course, remain in contact. I'm sure, however, I speak for all members in this chamber when I say that our thoughts are very much with the families of those who are suffering so much at the moment.
Thank you. Andrew R.T. Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and thank you, First Minister, for that detailed statement on your understanding of the horrors that unfolded in Tunisia. And in particular, we on this side of the chamber offer our condolences to the family of Trudy Jones, who undoubtedly left on what was to be a very happy holiday and obviously is not to return. And our deepest sympathies go to her family and friends at this very troubling time. Also acknowledging the heroics of many people as well, such as Matthew James, who acted as a human shield, protecting his fiancée and other members of his family. We can truly identify with such heroics in the face of such evil. But ultimately, what we saw last Friday, regrettably, will not be the last incident of its kind unless we unite and face down such terrible terror events wherever they occur in the world. I would like to ask two questions, if I may, of you, First Minister. The first question is, how is the Welsh Government working with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office to support Welsh casualties, Welsh survivors, and also returning tourists from the resort who witnessed such horrors and atrocities that wouldn't be out of place in a war zone, so that the support that maybe some of the sponsored bodies that the Welsh Government support here in Wales, such as the Health Service and in particular social services, can, if they are required, offer that support for people who witness such a traumatic event, and obviously some people will be obviously carrying injuries from that event. And what, given the discussions that his officials have had with the government in Westminster, who lead on many of these issues, does he expect over the coming days regarding announcements for the repatriation of people back from the resorts and ultimately any other news that we might expect on casualties with over another 12 at least bodies to identify that could be from Britain?
Yes, at this moment in time, not all bodies have been identified. I can inform members that I do receive the daily situation report from the FCO and from the wider UK government departments and embassy and consular staff who are involved. It's clear that there will be more confirmed fatalities, At the moment, the identification process is still ongoing. I know that there are many UK embassy and consular staff on the ground who are, at this moment in time, working closely with other UK departments and agencies to ensure that people can come home. And I know the Ministry of Defence has been involved in that process. At this moment in time, the objective is to identify those who have been killed, to return those who have been injured back to the UK, and then, of course, to deal with the injuries that people have suffered as a result of the events there. I think it's also worth noting that we understand that there will be a need to provide people with emotional support. There are many people who witnessed the events that occurred in Tunisia, and they will, of course, have to come to terms with what they observed and witnessed when they were there. The Welsh NHS, of course, will stand ready to support all those people who need counselling, perhaps, in the future, and any help with any physical injuries, as members would expect. But at this moment in time, the information that we have is that the effort is going in, and this, of course, is what we would expect inevitably, to identifying the bodies that remain, in order that families may be properly informed, and, of course, to ensure that people are returned home as quickly as possible.
Leader of Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
Diolch, Llywydd, and I thank the First Minister for his statement, and I would like to echo the sentiments that have already been expressed here this afternoon. The attack upon holidaymakers in Tunisia last week were deplorable and reflected a heinous disregard for human life. On behalf of Plaid Cymru, the Party of Wales, I want to express my condolences to the families of those who were murdered and injured. And our thoughts go out to all people, wherever they live in the world, who have to live with the daily terror of violence. There is too much of it in too many places in the world, and this attack has brought it close to home. And we too pay tribute to Trudy Jones and Matthew James. Those lucky enough to return home have been left injured and traumatised, and the families of those killed have been left heartbroken. At times of such repulsive actions, humanity can be shown at its very worst. It can also show its best, and it's been reported that local people created a human shield around the resort in an attempt to protect those inside. And there have been further stories of care, compassion and bravery. At a time of such tragedy, we can also see that people demonstrated the very best of humanity, and it is in that spirit that we can and we must overcome the forces of hatred in all of its forms and of perpetual conflict. And I'm sure that all of us here and the First Minister would agree.
Yes, it's difficult, of course, to try to understand the mindset of the person who carried out these attacks. What we can say with firm certainty is this: that the views of the gunmen are not shared by the vast majority of the people of Tunisia. The views of the gunmen are not shared by the vast majority of Muslims. And we all saw film footage of local people trying to help. We also film footage of local people providing support to those who had been affected, and I thank the people of Tunisia for the support that they have provided. We know that this wasn't an isolated incident. There were other incidents across other parts of the world. We saw what happened in Kuwait. We saw what happened, but for very different reasons, in Carolina as well. Tunisia is a country that has made a good transition from being effectively a country that was unfree to an open democracy. It's for that reason, I believe, that the country is particularly targeted by those who abhor democracy and those who wish to claim that democracy is alien to their own particular interpretation of a religious tradition. But the people of Tunisia, just as the people of Wales and the UK share with them, want to see freedom, they want to see prosperity, and they wish to welcome visitors to their country safely, and they will, I have no doubt, abhor the attacks that occurred in their own country and their actions show how abhorrent these attacks were to them.
Leader of the Welsh Liberal Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. Could I thank the First Minister for his statement and answers to questions this afternoon. The events of last Friday in the beautiful country of Tunisia are truly shocking to all of us and an affront to all right-thinking people of all faiths and none. I would like to offer, on behalf of the Welsh Liberal Democrat group, our sincere condolences to the family and loved ones of Trudy Jones, and indeed to the whole community of Blackwood, who I know have been completely shocked by the events. The manager of the care home where she worked, transforming the lives of people, spoke very movingly of her record of service, but also spoke of the need to support one another. And would the First Minister recognise that for those people returning, or those people touched in any way by this tragedy will need support from services that are under the control of Welsh Government, and commit to making sure that those are made available. As was said by Leanne Wood, there have been incredible tales of bravery emerging from Tunisia, whether that be hotel staff forming a human shield to protect tourists, or indeed Matthew James, who threw himself in front of the attacker to save his loved one. I understand that Mr James is now back home and is safe and in a stable condition at UHW here in Cardiff, and I'm sure we would all want to wish him well for a speedy recovery. First Minister, I know that a number of other tourists with serious injuries have been evacuated, but I understand Mr James is the only Welsh citizen in that position. But what discussions have you had, if any, with the tourism companies, who have people continuing to be in those resources that may be having difficulty in evacuating them, and what can Welsh Government do to support any efforts to evacuate people who want to leave Tunisia as quickly as possible, and what ongoing discussions are you having with the Foreign Office about advice to Welsh holidaymakers who may be now frightened about plans that they have made for trips later on this summer?
I'm aware that at least one holiday company is offering refunds to holidaymakers who have booked holidays in Tunisia. The advice I would give to people who are considering whether or not to go on holiday to Tunisia is to follow the FCO advice. That's important. It's not for me to give them advice. It's important that the FCO is able to do that, being, of course, the organisation that has people on the ground. In time, of course, it's actually hugely important that people do go to Tunisia, because if the Tunisian economy suffers greatly because of a lack of tourists, that can only fuel the ideology that caused this atrocity in the first place. Although people are going to be nervous as individuals, that much we accept. I am aware of the fact that there is a significant operation that's being carried out with the armed forces and with the FCO to airlift people home. At this moment in time, it's not clear whether any others from Wales will be identified as having been injured or killed. We're not in that position yet, because not everybody has sadly been identified. But nevertheless, I am confident the UK government is doing all that it can in order to assist people from all parts of the UK who have been affected by this incident. The leader of the Liberal Democrats is perfectly correct to ask what services should be made available to people to deal with the aftermath. In many ways, of course, the physical injuries that somebody has are easy to observe and treatment can be offered, but it's the psychological scars that are less easy to identify and need, of course, to be identified as early as possible and then help given. There will be people, I have no doubt, who will require counselling after what they have witnessed. There will be people who will need extra help beyond that, possibly in order to come to terms with what they've seen. We know, of course, that there are examples in history where people have survived events like this and then become immersed in a type of guilt. Why me? Why am I somebody who survived? And that's something that's very difficult to predict. And of course, it's important that people, if they feel that way, do seek the assistance that they need in order to help themselves. At this stage, it's very difficult to know how many people will be in that position, but we, of course, stand ready, as members would expect, to ensure that the Welsh NHS is there to help them.
Gwyn Price.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I would like to add my sincere condolences to those already expressed and to the family and friends of my constituent, Trudy Jones, who lived and worked in Blackwood. It is difficult to comprehend the sad and tragic circumstances. Trudy was a loving mother and a family lady who will be sadly missed. Trudy worked in Highfields Nursing Home in Blackwood, and her manager described her as an absolute angel, so kind. Trudy would help anybody at any time. I do ask for the family to be granted privacy at this very sad time.
I don't think I can go beyond the words that the member for Is-deitlau has used. What struck me in what he said was the description of Trudy Jones as an absolute angel, and that is something that has come clearly from those who are close to her. I don't think I can add anything to what the member has said. I think he has encapsulated Trudy Jones and what she meant to her community.
Thank you. Mick Anthony.
First Minister, the solidarity we see around this chamber is the sort of an indication of the sort of solidarity that is really needed throughout the world as people unite to actually pose the evil of intolerance and terrorism, not just from this event, but unfortunately for potential future events. I would particularly like to welcome back to the UK Matthew James, who's already been mentioned, a constituent of mine from Trehavod, who out of dark times and the most tragic and terrible times is also an indication of the extent within our humanity that people can exhibit the most remarkable and outstanding bravery. An individual who threw himself in front of the gunfire, was shot 3 times, protecting the life of his fiancée. He is now back in the UK. He is now receiving treatment, is now very positive. And I wonder, First Minister, whether if you have time and opportunity to send your regards and wishes to Matthew James.
Yeah, I thank the member for his comments. An outstanding act of instinctive bravery, I think is the description that I would apply. I would very much like to send my best wishes to Matthew now, of course, and I hope to be able to go further than that over the next few days in terms of perhaps, if it's possible, being able to visit him as well, if that is convenient to him.
I have no other speakers, but I'd like to thank the members for their very fitting tributes, and I think we should all appreciate the day and enjoy every day. We now move back to questions on the paper, and the questions to the First Minister. And first this afternoon, Ellen Jones.
What are the Welsh Government's priorities for promoting tourism in West Wales?
West Wales, of course, is a vital part of Wales's overall tourism offering. Our marketing across all channels will always feature tourism products in West Wales alongside all the other parts of Wales.
First Minister, Cardigan Castle will now be an important tourism resource in West Wales, and I thank you for opening the castle formally last week. I hope you enjoyed being chaired as bard and having the Dawns Flodau performed to you in the castle. Would you agree with me, therefore, that the model which has developed and promoted Cardigan Castle of the Cadwgan Group locally, the County Council and the funding bodies all coming together to promote a heritage project as an economic and tourism project that will also bring benefits to the area?
Well, I don't believe that I'll ever have the opportunity again to sit in the bardic chair, apart from the opportunity I had last week. But may I say, Cardigan Castle in a way wasn't part of the town for many years because of the fact that nobody could enter the castle. There was a woman who lived there who was quite a character in the town, and the fear was that once she passed away, the castle would fall apart. But that has not been the story. May I pay tribute once again to the organisations that have been exceptionally active in order to ensure that the castle is not only open to the public once again, but has been made safe and secure. And of course the house within the castle has been reopened again because the house was in a terrible condition when I saw it about 2 years ago. No, it's a very good example of what can be done when active people in the community work with the community and also attract European funding. That was exceptionally important for the project, for the benefit of the local community.
Davis.
Diolch Llywydd. Prif Weinidog.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, Scomer Island and Marloes Beach are the only areas in my constituency that have made the list of the best 10 places in Europe for family holidays according to Lonely Planet. Now, I am sure that you would agree with me that this is the kind of recognition which is immeasurable in terms of its value in marketing Pembrokeshire internationally. So can you tell us what specific steps the Welsh Government is taking to take advantage of this and to promote areas such as Scomer Island?
Well, I've been to Scomer twice. I visited it about 2 years ago, if I remember rightly, and a building had been adapted on the island so that people could use it when they were on the island, and that's exceptionally important, and also Skocum as regards the bird life on that island. And of course it's exceptionally important in Pembrokeshire. We've been working very hard with the tourism companies within the area to promote tourism in Pembrokeshire, which isn't and not too far from Scomer. We have the new museum at Angle, Milford Haven area, on the banks of the Cleddau, and also funding has been given to the tourism and Chamber of Trade to promote Goodig in the north of Pembrokeshire.
Diolch Llywydd. First Minister, picking up the reference that you've just made, the potential for promoting tourism by attracting cruise ships to West Wales is considerable. However, ensuring a warm welcome and high-quality facilities are critical to developing the visitor experience. And in that context, it was Fishguard and Goodig Chamber of Trade and Tourism just recently that emphasised the importance of such infrastructure in developing that potential to the full. First Minister, recognising the importance of supporting communities that are improving their destination management, what can Welsh Government do to further promote investment in the area and also potentially to create a positive climate for the development of the long-awaited Fishguard Marina?
Well, there are 6 cruise ports in Wales. 2 of them are in Pembrokeshire, at Milford and Fishguard, and Fishguard has been identified together with Holyhead as the most suitable for the development of new facilities, given the depth of water and access to tourist attractions. In terms of the cruise business, I can say that a long-term strategy for the cruise business in Wales is presently being undertaken, because we know that the present port facilities generally are not yet adequate for the ships that are under construction between now and for the course of the next 5 years. So we are looking at how we can ensure that the great growth that we've seen in cruise business in Wales continues in the future, and our port facilities are able to accommodate the new ships that are being built.
Question 2, Alan Fred Jones.
Diolch. Amlaeth for Prif Weinidog.
Thank you. Will the First Minister make a statement on the Welsh Government's cancer strategy?
Our cancer delivery plan sets out the action we are taking in cancer services and outcomes. Yesterday, for example, we announced how a further £1 million a year is being invested by the Cancer Implementation Group to remodel and improve cancer services in Wales.
Thank you very much. You will be aware, First Minister, of the campaign by Mr Iddron Williams from Bangor, Hawl I Fyw, Fighting Chance, and there was good promising news following his treatment at Manchester recently. And Mr Williams has behaved with dignity during this difficult time, and he's very eager to meet with you to discuss the situation of patients similar to him. Will you be willing to respond positively to that request?
Well, I don't know yet what the purpose or aim of any such meeting would be, but may I say at the outset that I'm very pleased to hear that things are going well for Mr Williams. He has had a very unusual reaction to the drugs that he's on, and that is something to be welcomed, and that shows something about his character too, because of the fact that he's doing well. May I also say that I would say to Mr Williams that there is an opportunity for him now to make an application to the IPFR fund, because he has shown that he is exceptional in his response and reaction to these drugs. I have asked for the guidelines to be amended in order to ensure that it's quite clear that when there is such a response or reaction, that he can ask once again for funding through the IPFI.
Minister, one of the cancer legacies we suffer in Wales is from our industrial heritage and exposure to asbestos, and this 4th of July is Action on Mesothelioma Day, which hits this country particularly hard, and of course there's an event in the Assembly tomorrow lunchtime to promote this. Will you make a statement on the Welsh Government's support for the highlighting of the incidence of asbestos and Action for Mesothelioma Day and people who live with this terrible condition in Wales?
Of course, I understand the Deputy Minister for Health is due to attend the Senate event tomorrow. We welcome, of course, the charter that's been drawn up by Mesothelioma UK, and we will, of course, continue to work to ensure enforcement agencies are protecting people from the dangers of asbestos. But we were, of course, saddened that the member's own bill was rejected by the Supreme Court.
Altaf Hussain.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, your government's cancer strategy states that the Welsh population should have an excellent chance for surviving wherever they live in Wales. As with any plan, what matters is delivery. How will your government improve cancer survival rates if the practice of downgrading urgent referrals from GPs is allowed to continue, knowing that no two patients are alike, knowing that the generic referral system with ticking boxes and red flags cannot hold true for every patient, knowing that we cannot have a tailor-made patient? Thank you.
I'm not sure I understood the question, but I mean, if we look at our figures, we know that for 31-day waits for treatment and 62-day waits for treatment, we are ahead of England. The reason for that is that GPs are being vigilant in referring people. The vast majority of people who are referred to specialist care who are suspected of having cancer happily don't turn out to have cancer, but it's absolutely right to say that our GPs have done an excellent job in referring people as quickly as possible. We see that in the statistics, and we expect to see that reflected in the 5-year survival statistics and beyond over the next few years.
Julie Morgan.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Early detection is a very important part of the cancer delivery plan. Is the First Minister aware that Breast Test Wales has the highest cancer detection rate of any screening service in the UK? And what does he think can be done to improve the uptake in the other screening services, such as cervical cancer and bowel cancer?
It's to do with publicity, of course, and making people aware of the potential risks, and also making it as easy as possible for people to access the tests. And Breast Test Wales is an excellent example of where that's been done with mobile units, with awareness being very high amongst women, and we are seeing, of course, the benefits of that. The member is absolutely right to say that with every cancer, early detection is crucial. With some cancers, early detection isn't possible, but breast cancer isn't one of those, and so early detection for that particular form of cancer is absolutely fundamental to increasing someone's survival rate beyond 5 years in the future.
We now move to questions from the party leaders, and first this afternoon, the Leader of Plaid Cymru, Leanne Wood.
Diolch, Llywyd. First Minister, the person who has been tipped to be your next party leader has said that Wales was underfunded when he was your party's Chief Secretary to the Treasury. He said that he maintained the government line and didn't speak out. First Minister, how would you describe someone who says something publicly knowing it to be untrue?
Well, I lead my party in Wales, so I don't know who you're talking about.
Well, that's a very flippant answer.
Flippant question.
And it's not a surprise at all that you have sidestepped the issue, because you sidestep issues every week here. This is a question about the NHS, about our schools and about our communities suffering from decades of underinvestment. If the then Labour Chief Secretary to the Treasury knew that Wales was being short-changed almost a decade ago, why did your party choose to do nothing about it?
I am not here to explain the actions and comments of others, and it's a matter for them to explain. What I do know is that we have been the party pushing half of the funding floor. My view is that Barnet is no longer relevant, and it's about time that Wales got its share of funding, and that Scotland wasn't seen as untouchable as far as funding is concerned. Would she join me in saying that Scotland should be funded according to need, and that Barnet therefore needs to go?
First Minister, I am here to speak on behalf of Wales.
Order! Order!
And for you to distance yourself from a Labour leadership contender is quite staggering. Yeah. First Minister, your party introduced the funding formula that disadvantaged Wales from the very outset. You refused to address the matter when your party formed the UK government in 1997, and your party said nothing when it was elected to lead the first devolved government. You've sat on the Holtham report, and you refused to take responsibility for raising just some of the money that you spend. You refuse to support parity of funding for Wales with Scotland. First Minister, what is it about Wales that makes your party want to single us out for disadvantage?
Again, the obsession with Scotland. Does she not listen to David Thomas on her own benches? She doesn't like to be criticised, does she? There's a streak of intolerance there. Does she not listen to David Thomas on her own benches, who said last week that the obsession with Scotland was costing her party? Why doesn't she just for once make the point about standing up for Wales as we do on these benches, rather than talking about Scotland on and on and on and on? It shows that we on these benches are the true party of Wales.
You're distancing yourself from your leadership contenders.
We now move to the Leader of the Welsh Democrats, Kirsty Williams.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, your government has set a target to reduce carbon emissions by 40% by 2020. Between 2012 and 2013, the last time figures were available, greenhouse gas emissions in both England and Scotland fell by some 4%. Could you explain why in Wales we saw an increase of 10% over the same timescale?
Yeah, it's to do with industry, and it's to do with the with increases in production, particularly in industries such as Tata Steel, which of course are major contributors to carbon emissions, but without which of course we'd end up with many thousands of jobs fewer in Wales. So in some way it's as a result of increased economic activity, but nevertheless it's true to say that inevitably has an effect on carbon emissions.
First Minister, I can't help think that that's a bit of an excuse. Over a quarter of coal burnt in Europe is burnt by Germany, and they are significant producers of both steel and iron. In fact, the biggest producers of steel in the EU, the seventh biggest producer of steel in the entire world. Yet since 1990, Germany have decreased their greenhouse gas emissions by 27% while still producing both steel and iron, compared to just a drop of 12% in Wales. In Scotland, electricity generation from coal increased in 2012 and generation from gas fell, yet Scotland have managed to reduce their emissions too. Does your government remain committed to delivering on the 2020 target?
Well-being of future generations bill, and that explains our position as a government. We have environmental legislation, and there are challenging targets that have been considered as part of that legislation. Now, it's correct to say that we do have, I would expect disproportionately, high energy intensive industries that employ many, many thousands of people. One way of cutting our carbon emissions at a stroke would be to close those facilities down. We don't want to do that. We want to make sure that people have those jobs, and it means that trade-offs have to be made. That doesn't mean, of course, you ignore the situation. I know that Tata, for example, have been exceptionally proactive in reducing their carbon footprint and reducing their energy use.
First Minister, Germany can produce more steel than anyone else in the EU and still bring its carbon emissions down. And perhaps, Presiding Officer, the First Minister misheard me. Is the First Minister committed to delivering his 2020 target? Because he didn't actually say that he was. Now, one way to actually make the sea change that you need to make in dropping carbon emissions is actually to ensure that we are open for business and can do business in small-scale, community-owned renewable projects, just like Germany, actually, where community-owned renewables account for almost half of its electricity generation. Yet companies like Dulles here in Wales say it's harder to do business in Wales than anywhere else in the Kay, will your government look at international lessons we can learn where community-owned renewables account for such large parts of generation to ensure that you can indeed, if you're still committed to it, reach your 2020 target?
Yes, we're committed to the target, and yes, we want to see more community regeneration projects, and that's why, of course, any overall was put in place. But I have to say that the chances of seeing an increase in renewable energy are almost zero, given the UK government's decision recently to withdraw all subsidies from onshore wind, to withdraw all subsidies from photovoltaic cells. I don't know whether they bought a lot of hamsters to run on wheels in order to power electrical generation over the course of the next 10 years, but it does show the vacuity of UK energy policy under the current UK government.
And now we have the Leader of the Opposition, Andrew Archie-Davies.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, what is your understanding of the current state of play around the basic payment scheme?
We are looking to see which of the options we should look at, whether there should be a flat rate or whether there should be an area rate.
This is a huge issue of concern for rural Wales, and in particular many thousands of farmers, the length and breadth of Wales. It is because your government was taken to court back in December and caved in at the steps of the court that obviously the industry has so much uncertainty about the future payment rates, which are still to be announced from your government. Can you tell us when the Welsh Government will be bringing forward the announcement that the industry can at least have some certainty? They might disagree with the model that you'll bring forward, but they do need to be working in an area of certainty.
That is ongoing at the moment. As I said to the member, we're looking at least two models as to how the system will work. I am confident that we will have a system in place in order to pay farmers in good time, as we always have done in the past.
So I deduce from that that you have no idea when you're going to make this announcement. I mean, obviously there's been speculation. There has been speculation that you are going to make that statement at the Royal Welsh Show. But whichever way the statement is made and confirmation is brought forward, do you believe that there will be a significant impact on the payment window, which starts December the 1st, or do you believe that the Welsh Government will be able to make the full payment to businesses come December the 1st that are so important for the survival of those businesses, the length and breadth of rural Wales?
Well, I mean, members in the chamber here, all parties said declare your interest. He didn't do that. But from our point of view, we are confident of the fact that he doesn't have to worry about being paid, I'm sure. Are confident of the fact that payment will be made on time and as we have always planned in the future. We've been in this position before where it has been a challenge to put in place a new payment system, but that has been done. There will be an announcement in the next, in a very short space of time as to how the system will work, and I have no doubt that farmers need not fear that payments will be made on time, as we in Wales have always done in the past.
Can I raise a point of order, Presiding Officer?
Point of order.
I'd be grateful.
I take it now, it's usually taken later.
That's why I've stood up, because the First Minister believes that I've asked a question because I have a personal interest in it. It was a general question that affects the interests of agriculture generally.
Order.
Of agriculture generally. The member's declaration of interest clearly shows that I am a farmer. I have an interest, obviously, in the scheme. There is no hiding of that interest.
Order.
There is no interest, there's no undeclared interest, and I appreciate that from the Labour benches, obviously they've tried to use the press to besmirch politicians in this chamber, but I don't believe it's appropriate when I'm questioning the First Minister for him to cast aspersions that I'm motivated out of personal gain.
I'm sorry, but if the Leader of the Opposition has made a declaration, he should tell people how much money he gets. That's transparency.
That's out of order.
I don't intend to pursue this. What Andrew Archie-Davies said wasn't a point of order, it's a point of information, but I don't wish to continue that debate. We now move on to question 3, which is Rhys Iorwerth.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister make a statement on attracting cruise ships to Wales?
Welsh Government is working to promote Wales as a high-class cruise destination. In 2015, 46 ships will visit Wales compared with 23 ships in 2014, an increase of 155% as of the 1st of January 2013.
Thank you for that response. There was some disappointment in Holyhead recently when a large cruise ship was turned away from the port, mainly because of concern that the current jetty, the industrial jetty, was inappropriate for a cruise ship of that size in the weather conditions that prevail. But I'm sure that the First Minister would agree with his Minister for Economy that we can't allow such an important industry to chance. Now, there is a role for Holyhead which could be developed, part of the pier that could be developed into a purpose-built dock for cruise ships of this kind. Can the First Minister give a commitment to support and assist any feasibility work to consider the possibility of that kind of development, and also to support in any way the government can to ensure that that kind of development can take place?
Well, there was a problem, that's true to say, and I understand that the problem was resolved as regards the next time the celebrity silhouette comes to Holyhead in August. But in the long term, of course, it's important to develop the port in order to ensure that more ships can come into the port itself. As I said in my earlier answer to William Powell, we are considering what the strategy should be for the ports in Wales that can receive such ships, and we understand that Holyhead and Fishguard are amongst the strongest as regards what would need to be done to develop the ports. Ultimately, we all wish to see Holyhead growing, not just as a place that accepts and welcomes Irish ferries, but as a tourist destination.
Presiding Officer. First Minister, in September last year, the Deputy Minister for Sport, Culture and Tourism stated that the first American cruise ships would start to dock at the newly improved Llandudno Pier from 2015. With ports in the south and west of Wales having already welcomed their first cruise ships of the year, can I ask the First Minister for an update on when Llandudno will be fully open for business? I think it's important that we don't just raise expectations without looking at the full practical implications. Is it possible for cruise ships to dock at the Victorian Llandudno Pier, or for passenger tenders to dock at old Victorian wooden jetties? Thank you, First Minister.
Well, it is the case, of course, that at one time there was a regular summer passenger service to the Isle of Man that left from the pier in Llandudno. I remember that very well, but not for some years. But nevertheless, the work that is needed to identify whether Llandudno will be able to take cruise ships or indeed other forms of visitor ships in the future is still ongoing.
Elena Parrott.
Josh Lewis. First Minister, when a big cruise liner goes into port, obviously it makes a huge impact on that one day and that one location. But if we want a more sustainable approach to attracting cruise income for Wales, then something like the Hurtigruten, which operates in Norway, which stops point to point in many, many places along the coast and stays within our own local economy, might actually be a more sustainable option for our smaller tourism businesses. And I'm wondering what discussions you've had about developing those shorter and smaller cruise operations.
Well, these are things that are being considered as part of the long-term strategy of to attract cruise business into Wales. Of course, we want to make sure that we attract ships of different sizes. The emphasis has been on making sure our facilities can cope with the bigger ships in the future. That doesn't mean, of course, that we ignore the potential that is there with the smaller cruise ships as they sail around Wales.
Question 4 is Joyce Watson.
Diolch, Llywydd. Will the First Minister make a statement on access to primary care in Mid and West Wales?
Yes, health boards, including those in the Mid and West, are implementing local plans to improve access to the right care at the right time, closer to home.
Thank you for that answer. Last week, Hywel Dda announced the recruitment of two new consultants to Withybush, and that is extremely welcome. At the same time, the Health Minister gave the go-ahead for the £20 million Cardigan Health Centre, and that again is fantastic news for that region. Do you agree with me, First Minister, these developments demonstrate a confidence in the future, and what impact do you think that this could have in terms of attracting new primary care professionals to that area?
Hugely important. I know the Mid Wales Healthcare Collective and the work that's gone on around that has been hugely important in terms of working with practitioners to develop a healthcare system for the rural West. We see the investment that's been made into Withybush, and we've seen also consultants in Withybush providing solutions themselves to particular issues, particularly with regard to A&E. And of course, the announcement about Cardigan will provide a fantastic health centre, including a minor injuries unit and other services for the local community.
Angela Burns.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Unfortunately, none of the consultants recruited were consultant urologists, and this is an area that has been pushed out to GP surgeries. This is a time in people's lives when they are desperately needing to see someone quite quickly. They've often got a problem with their sorry, I've forgotten the word for it. The equipment that is attached to them. The problem is that a lot of GP surgeries do not have the consultant nurse or doctor who is able to put such devices to people. And so we've got a lot of people within the Haldar Trust who are struggling to get urology services at a community level or at a hospital level. And I wondered, First Minister, what you can do to urge Haldar to look at rectifying this situation, because it affects an awful lot of people, especially gentlemen with prostate cancer problems.
I will write to the member on that. More generally, of course, we would want to see GP services, surgeries providing services like that that don't have to be provided in hospitals. That much is true. The finance has to be arranged for that. We understand that. I'm unaware of a particular issue with regard to neurology, but I will write to the member with the findings of my investigations.
Simon Thomas.
Diolch, Llywydd.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. One of the most prominent concerns brought to me in terms of primary care services is the waiting time for an appointment with the GP. And one of the reasons for that, of course, is that there is very often a shortage of practices that have a number of GPs, particularly in Mid and West Wales. So what assessment are you making as government of the need for some of these patients to see a GP, or indeed how could they be seen as an advanced nurse practitioner, particularly those who are able to prescribe also, because it appears to me that this method could be introduced in order to reduce the delays in the GP surgeries?
Well, I believe that's a fair point, and of course we ask people to choose well, and the first protocol should be a pharmacy and then a practice nurse within a GP surgery, and then the doctor himself. A nurse can do very much to assist people who wish to see a GP, and I know that there are examples across Wales where systems are in place with a number of surgeries where people are able to see a nurse without an appointment, and the nurse can deal with the majority of problems that people present with. And we would encourage surgeries to consider that kind of system in order to take the pressure off the GPs so that they don't have to deal with cases that they don't need to see, and make it easier for the public.
First Minister, earlier this year, your government renegotiated the GMS contract to create a sustainability fund to protect access to primary care in deprived and rural areas. It was the anticipation that that fund would be available by the end of June, which is today, and that fund is going to be absolutely crucial in securing the ongoing provision of a GP service at Llanwrtyd Wells. Could you confirm that that fund, applications to that fund will now be able to be made by general practitioners who wish to access it?
I'm not aware of there being any difficulty in terms of that fund. It's there for a reason, and the members outlined that reason. I'm familiar with the situation in Llanwrtyd. But it is important, of course, that when the fund is made available, that the applications are made in order to ensure that rural family medical services can be preserved and enhanced.
Question 5, Mark Isherwood.
How does the Welsh Government ensure that its child poverty programmes engage fully with parents?
Well, family engagement is at the heart of Flying Start, Families First and Communities First, because supporting both parents to achieve better employment, health and education outcomes is a central part of tackling poverty.
Well, successive reports have recognised the importance for the welfare and development of their children of both parents remaining closely involved in the lives of their children following separation, yet fathers frequently feel excluded from services. What data, therefore, does the Welsh Government compile and hold on the levels of engagement with fathers by Welsh Government programmes, including Flying Start, Families First and Communities First, or otherwise, how does it monitor this important matter?
I suppose it's difficult to actually monitor levels of engagement from fathers, but I can say to the member that we do expect local authorities to actively promote services to fathers and support their engagement. Many services are providing dedicated support specifically tailored to the particular needs of fathers, including providing fathers groups and employing dedicated dads workers, as they're called. Training has also been provided for staff to ensure that they are better able to engage with fathers and to build relationships with them.
John Griffiths.
First Minister, would you agree with me that community-focused schools are very important in terms of engaging with parents and communities? And far too many of our schools are still closed at weekends, weekday evenings and indeed school holidays. And it would be very beneficial for parents and communities in Wales if we were to have a more consistent accessibility and availability of our schools. And I wonder if you would commit to exploring possible mechanisms to achieve that greater consistency.
Well, we would encourage, of course, schools to be made available as far as possible to the community. The difficulty is sometimes the design of the school. The older schools are not designed to be secure for use after school hours. Newer schools are. We would expect any new build school to be able to be accessible to the community beyond school hours, and that needs to be reflected in the design of the school itself. And I've seen many examples across Wales where a certain section of the school can be kept open beyond school hours, the rest of the school can be kept secure, and of course the facilities of the school and indeed outside the school grounds can be made available. So yes, in the future all schools will be in that position, but there can be some difficulties with some of the older schools that weren't designed to be open after hours.
Peter Black.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, last week in questions you gave a very strong, or made a very strong preference in relation to Flying Start in Croesero and Clyncorrwg, that service should be continued within the communities where it had started, and those communities should not have to travel a great distance to access that service. And later in that meeting, the Communities Minister also said that it should continue in September and has written to members to that effect. I've now had a letter which David Rees has received from the Chief Executive of the East Petolbert Council, which he has shared with campaigners, in which the Chief Executive effectively says that the alternative provision will be available elsewhere in the Upper Avon Valley, and he doesn't feel that there is any obligation on the Council to continue that provision within the existing communities of Croesero and Clyncorrwg, effectively directly contrary to the assurances which we've had in this chamber. Is it possible, First Minister, that the ministers here could liaise with the East Petolbert Council to ensure that from September this year, Croesero and Clyncorrwg do have a continuation of that Flying Start service in their own communities?
Well, I haven't seen the letter, but I will ask the Minister to look at the issue on behalf of yourself and, of course, the member for Aberavon to see what the current situation is.
Lynn Eagle.
First Minister, it is strange to hear the Welsh Conservatives talking about child poverty when we know that George Osborne is planning a £5 billion tax credit bombshell for his emergency budget next week, despite their pre-election promises. Of course, if the briefing from the Treasury is to be believed, their plans will slash incomes for 2.7 million families, with many families set to lose £1,700 a year. Would you agree with me that if the Welsh Conservatives are serious about child poverty, they should focus their efforts on getting their UK government to change their spending plans?
Absolutely. I mean, we used to say to people, if you get a job, your income will increase. That's just no longer the case. We are seeing more and more examples of in-work poverty, and the proposals that have been put forward would make that worse. I think it can be summed up in this way. The Prime Minister says he wants to remove benefits and tax credits for those in work. He will then try to beg employers to pay more, and if they don't, tough luck. That's basically what the Prime Minister is at the moment. It's unfair, unjust, and above all, that's naive.
Question 6, Jonathan Saunders.
Presiding Officer, First Minister, will the First Minister make a statement on child and adolescent mental health services in North Wales?
Yes, we've recently announced an additional £7.6 million a year to support work underway to improve CAMS across Wales, and that represents an 18% increase in current resources.
Thank you. You will be aware of the immense concern as regards access to services, in particular for those suffering from eating disorders. And I currently have a constituent who is under specialist treatment now in Staffordshire. And it does beg the question why there is no eating disorder unit in Wales. Now, I'm given to understand that the North Wales Adolescent Centre in Abergele has got 6 beds long-term empty, has the kite team outreach there, is a secure and well-supported environment, has a school facility, gymnastics provision, and all the infrastructure therein for an eating disorders unit. As this is a specialist facility that's been bought and paid for within the past 5 years, I'm going to be looking into this more closely, but would you work with me to look at this as a possibility and a treatment centre for those with eating disorders, because this really is on the rise?
Good question. Well, it depends, of course, on the availability of specialists. It depends on the numbers of people going through a facility, because inevitably with unusual conditions, and thankfully eating disorders are still unusual, although I take the point that she makes about them being on the increase. It's important then that people with eating disorders are treated in specialist centres with specialists who see that condition day in, day out, week in, week out. I would not want to see a facility open where that expertise was lost to the patient. So we want to see the best services available to the people of Wales. If that means at the moment that the best services are available in England, we don't want to create a wall between Wales and England in terms of that service being available to people living in Wales.
Alan Fred Jones.
Thank you. The centre in Abergele has a very good reputation, but it is very difficult to get access to it, and there are young people in my constituency and in North West Wales who very often have to wait for months when they are most vulnerable until they are assisted by specialists. Now, what can your government do to ensure that young people who are in need do have access to these crucially important services at the right time?
Well, of course, I have alluded to the additional funding that has been announced, and that will help people not just to receive treatment, but will ensure that people don't become part of the criminal justice system, and will also assist people in receiving treatment outside the institution of the hospital and have treatment in the community.
Thanks, Roberts.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. First Minister, the number of young people waiting over 14 weeks has increased over this past 2 years in North Wales, from 20 in April 2013 to 385 by April of this year. The Health Board in North Wales has a history of not using funding allocated by the Welsh Government. If you look at the minutes of the Public Accounts Committee, for example, how then will you ensure that this funding is used according to the purpose designated by yourselves? And will there be a need for the Health Board in North Wales to have a specific action plan so that each of us can monitor it?
Well, the funding has to be designated for CAMS and has to be used to ensure that the services under CAMS actually is enhanced in the end of the day.
Question 7, Russell George.
Will the First Minister make a statement on the future of technical advice note 8?
TAN8 provides a robust framework for the planning of renewable energy in Wales.
First Minister, you'll be aware of the thousands of my constituents who descended on the National Assembly for Wales in 2011, calling on your government to scrap or review TAN8. Now, as TAN8 nearly entirely focuses on onshore wind, it does seem to me now that it is largely irrelevant following the UK government's announcement to end subsidy for onshore wind. Will you be bringing forward a new TAN that will focus on support for a much wider mix of renewable energy?
Well, TAN8, of course, has nothing to do with the Mid Wales Conjoined Inquiry. It's all a matter for the UK government. Nothing whatsoever to do with TAN8 at all. Nothing. And yes, protesters came here, but they were protesting, I suggest, in the wrong place, because it was the National Planning Statement, the English National Planning Statement, that was being used to deal with this. Well, I have absolutely no idea what forms of renewable energy the UK government is trying to promote. If I'm honest, onshore wind is gone, photovoltaic cells are gone, offshore wind is hugely expensive. We have the tidal lagoon, but there's no sign of a strike price on that. I am mystified as to where exactly energy policy is going. Because at the moment, it's simply a question of closing off avenues in terms of energy generation without opening up new ones. And I wait to see what the UK government has in terms of its plans to see how energy will be generated in the future. Because at the moment, not just myself, but the energy companies themselves are concerned, and they're beginning to worry about whether the UK is actually a wise place to invest.
Lle Griffith.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. A wider scheme with targets would also assist your government, First Minister. But may I ask you, as the planning bill now means that we in Wales will have a national development framework, does that mean that the days of TAN8 are numbered?
Well, every TAN is revised from time to time, but there's no point in having targets without the funding. And we don't have the funding. We know that the rocks are going, and it's not possible for us in Wales to draw down ways of producing energy into Wales, but we have to have attainable targets, and we wish to see the devolution of more powers to the Assembly and to the people of Wales, and we wish to see the devolution of a system of subsidies, as has happened in Scotland. But I'm going on about Scotland now, I admit that. But the reason why Scotland has done so well is because of the fact that Scotland controls the money that's available to these companies. We've suffered because of the fact that we come under the England and Wales system, and nobody's got any clue what now is the policy of the UK government towards energy. Even the companies themselves don't know.
Question 8, Keith Davis.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Will the First Minister provide an overview of the Welsh Government's actions to protect and support local heritage?
Well, local heritage gives our communities and towns their distinctive character, and so it deserves our appreciation and protection. And we're introducing a range of measures that will support the identification and management of heritage of local interest.
Adeiladau hanesyddol fel tŷ Llanelli yn gallu drwy feddwl creadigol a chefnogaeth ariannol yn cael ei drosglwyddo I fod yn drysor cenedlaethol.
They can be national treasures. Now, last week, the Minister for Public Services published an important statement on the sale of playing fields and the regulations therein. Now, given the financial pressures on local authorities now, using assets such as Park Howard in my constituency have been brought to the attention of the Cabinet member responsible in Carmarthenshire Council. Do you agree with me that there should be full consultation before any decision is made to sell such sites?
Well, 3 points. Firstly, this is a matter for the Council, and secondly, what the member has said is very sensible in my view. As regards his comments, I would not disagree with him. But thirdly, of course, this could become something which comes to the Minister in the planning system, so the Minister can't say any more at present. But the member's comments are very strong ones, and I hope that Carmarthenshire County Council are listening to him.
Following oral and written questions from me, your previous Heritage Minister gave me certain reassurances about Neath Abbey in my region, which of course comes under Cadw control. Only this month, local members of the community have had to lobby the local council in order to provide a bin big enough to keep the site tidy so that visitors don't see it looking a mess. Neath Abbey, I think, should be at the forefront of Cadw's National Maintenance and Development Programme, the forefront of destination management plans, and the forefront of the faith heritage plans. What evidence can you give me that the Welsh Government sees it the same way?
Well, I know that the Minister is in regular contact with Gwenda Thomas as the member for Neath, and I know that Neath Abbey is a hugely important asset, not just for the town of Neath and the surrounding villages, but for the wider area. It represents a hugely important part of our past in Wales, and both ourselves as a government and indeed Cadw are particularly find it particularly important to make sure that its heritage is maintained for the future.
Bethan Jenkins.
Prif Weinidog.
First Minister, it's become apparent this week that if the Rhondda Tunnel were to reopen, certainly one of the longest tunnels should be available for, it would be the longest for at least 6 months of the year, because there's one in Washington State which is closed for 6 months of the year. Can you do more as a government? Because I know that the Minister for Economy is looking at the situation at present in order to promote and encourage other areas to restore such tunnels to ensure that tunnels across the South Wales valleys can be restored and commemorated as an Indigenous part of our heritage.
I know that the Minister has funded a study on the tunnel itself, a very good idea, and I pay tribute to the local people who have considered this issue, but we will have to see the outcome of the study to see what's possible in the future.
We now move to item 2, which is